Hello and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha,
I'm Jared.
And I'm Chris.
and this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms. We are continuing to work our way through Revelation Space by Alastair Reynolds. This is the third discussion. We're discussing chapters 11 through 16. I don't have my copy with me, unfortunately, but the short story for today is Vibes by Lisa Tuttle. As always, from the big book of science fiction, which we are still working our way through. Short story for next week is going to be The Snake Who Read Chomsky by Josephine Saxton. Talk about an interesting title. And the chapters for next week from Revelation Space are going to be 17 through 27. That's some serious uneven chapter distribution because
Yeah.
for our first two discussions, we had like 4 or 5 chapters and then
Yeah.
making up 100 pages. But now we have 10 chapters making up 11 chapters making up 100 pages. Anyway, that's our schedule for the next week if you're reading along with us. So, with all that said, let's dive in. What did we think of chapters 11 through 16? Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah,
We are
I agree with
having
that.
some happy
That's a pretty good
Christmas.
sentiment. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was so glad that the pace picked up a little bit and the things were happening now instead of being explained to us, and we have quite a situation going on, and it's
Yeah.
I- it was much more enjoyable these past 100 pages. I got into it. I really got into it, and I was like, oh, good, good. This is starting to really turn into something I'm enjoying, and so yeah, we just got some really interesting events going on right now.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think we got some interesting stuff to talk about. We kind of focus down into what's Sylvester and Cora and those two groups. We kind of focused in on those two, and the back and forth, and I think the book has found its footing, and we are moving full steam ahead.
Yeah. It's definitely working much better as these two groups kind of come to the one place, isn't it? Because they it's not 4 stories, it's now 2 stories, and because of that, and because of the events, and plus there is quite a bit of action and gunplay and all of that kind of stuff happening. But I'm glad to say that although there's less exploration and more action, there's still no lack of intrigue and things going on in
Oh
there.
yeah,
It's still quite rich in terms of what's actually going on. This big truth reveal that Curie gives to Volyova is all just a pack of lies. It's just a different set of lies. Like I absolutely loved that. That was so good, for instance. And then all of the events with Mademoiselle being there and then not being there, all of that stuff's really, really cool, and how that plays out. And so it's not just action for action's sake; it's action with kind of questions of how's this happening, why is that happening, which was very satisfying.
Yeah, I agree. I think once the interweaving started to make sense and converging, I think it did start to really come together. And a lot of new mysteries were opened up or built upon, like that simulation in which we were told about the inhibitors and why it's worth destroying a planet to kill Sylvester, which we still don't know, but that was just, thrown out there for us to chew on as we make our way through the rest of this book. Also, notably, the second book of this trilogy is called Inhibitor Phase, I think. So, Inhibitor is going to play a big role soon, if not already in this book. But yeah, I do have like one minor complaint, like before we get into the nitty-gritties of all the chapters, is I felt like the dialogue felt very wooden or clunky, especially in the last set of chapters. It didn't really, like, I think there were a couple of characters who were interacting. The two things that stood out to me, the two exchanges that really stood out to me were between Surgic and Kuri when she makes her way down to the captain's chamber, and like that exchange felt like really strange. And then the one between Sylvester and his father, that also felt very like, I was like, forced, I think is the word I want to use. So it did pull me out a little bit, but as always, the rest of it with the mystery and the tech and all of that, enough to keep me going. Some minor complaint at best, but it did stand out to me enough that I feel like I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, dialogue is not his strong suit, I would say, um, but he definitely is stronger with with the just a setting up of the events in how they're plotted and how
Hmm.
they're working, um, everything's one thing's working with another thing to create some tension, and
Yeah.
like you said, there's the you get a little bit of mystery in there about motivation, um, and there you get a little bit of questioning about who's doing what. And what I liked was we finally got a little bit of, I guess, a little bit of humanity out of some of these characters, which was
Mm.
really lacking in the first half of the book.
Yeah.
um, you had like Corey questioning both the Mademoiselle's um, motivations, calling her
Mhm.
inhuman, which she basically is because she's a hologram, and
So, yeah.
or a an apparition in her head. And you have her also questioning her boss's
Voliova.
motivations,
Yeah.
Volyova's, for destroying a whole settlement. Um, and so I like the fact that we at least got a little bit of humanity, because she's supposed to be an assassin, and
Yeah.
so uh, um, and so it was a little unexpected coming from that quarter, but I think it worked pretty well, um, and so that was nice, and that was nice how, but she still had to wrestle with a whole bunch of conflicting um,
Mm.
loyalties in her head, because I don't think she wanted to fire upon the other person, but the other person went too far for her purposes. And
Mm.
um, at the big firefight at the end there, but at the end of the chapters we read, but so it was a lot of just conflicting stuff about her situation and her role, and I found her situation the most fascinating out of all of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting you bring up those two sections, Varsha, because I knew you were definitely going to say the first one, right? That
Mm.
conversation um between Skulvich and Curry. But I actually think in both cases they sort of don't fit with the general tone of the book. So the first one
Mm.
between Skulvich and Curry, I think would have worked quite well visually. You know, if this had been a screenplay,
Mm.
because I think there is definitely this feeling of they're not speaking freely. If you know what I mean, it's
Mm.
very stilted because they don't know, you know, whose side each other's on, and they're sort of feeling each other out. But it's sort of read very, like to say, stilted and kind of like unnatural in some ways.
Mm.
Whereas this, the conversation between Sylvester and himself, Cal, was almost like a comedy double act. Like where did that come from? All
Yeah.
this not there was a lot of winking going on
Yeah.
and side eye and all of this kind of stuff, and I was like, what? This didn't happen the first time. There was none
Yeah.
of the maybe I missed it, but it was very pronounced. It was just because ladies were present, or something like that. But it was odd. Like
Mm.
I can't say that I didn't enjoy it because it stuck out for that reason, but it just kept on coming into my head that they're the same person. Although I think only one of them really knows that, even though it
Mm.
keeps on getting kind of floated about. And it actually it's been a question that's been resonating in my head all week is if you found out that you were a clone of your not say father, but say grandfather, right? Or
Mm.
grandmother, as the case may be, what would that actually mean to you? Like I'm really trying to figure out what difference that would make to me.
Mm.
Oh, I think we lost him.
Oh, okay. I thought it was me because I'm pretty sure my husband turned on the microwave and I lose my network whenever that happens. Um, but
Yeah, we lost him. All right.
lost him just after raising an interesting question. What
Yeah,
do
I
you
know.
think?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
What would that mean? Learning that. Um, would it, especially in this kind of a far future setting where it shouldn't be such a surprise that this technology exists and that it would come about. So yeah, but they seem to put an importance on it
Hmm.
that's
Mhm.
a little, maybe a little overemphasized for us latter 21st century people who think cloning is going to happen any day now. So
Yeah, yeah.
um when he wrote this, maybe it was a more of a far-fetched thing, but uh so yeah, we were talking about your question, Chris, about would
Yeah,
it be
yeah.
such, what would affect learning you were a clone um be like. And yeah, on the one hand, I want to say, okay, so it shouldn't be such a big deal in such a advanced technological society. But on the other hand, is we don't know the history of cloning in this setting, so we don't
Yeah.
know if it was something that just didn't happen because of complications, or if it's something that maybe was frowned upon and got outlawed in different what areas or what have you. So yeah, we got a lot to learn about why. First of all, we don't know
Yeah.
what kind of reaction he's going to have, and second of all, why we got a lot to learn about why he would have any reaction in either direction or what have you. So, uh,
Yeah.
good question.
But also, I think some of the things that feel like advanced technology or things that, we're supposed to think for the first time, they don't, it's not really like, I don't know why there is so much importance to the clone. Well, there is because, he has a version of himself living in his head who can take over and like not give control back to him. But in terms of just like sense of self and identity, identical twins have their own sense of self and identity, right? Like I don't know, I haven't been around
Hmm.
many or any, I think, well, many I think is more accurate, but it's not like, they are the same person. They both have a sense of self and
Hmm.
identity that's like different from the other. So like sure, it might feel like some earth shattering news, but especially with all the genetic modifications, he's not even an identical clone.
Yeah.
So it I would think that it shouldn't affect his sense of self too much, but maybe it would. I don't know. Like I feel like that is a very rational way to think about this, but who knows where you might fall at the end of the contemplation. But
Mm. I think it'd be more of a question of finding out after 200 years of life.
yeah, that
It's
makes
one
sense.
thing to say
Yeah.
if you were young and you found out right away and you lived with it for a long time, and you'd be like, okay, this, I am who I am. I have my own identity, and et cetera, um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. You're right. It might not be a big deal at all. It might just be, something.
yeah. There might be something to the
Yes.
idea of being manufactured that might break you a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, Chris, you were
Yeah.
saying.
I mean, I sort of I posed the question because your observation is exactly the same as mine. To be perfectly honest, like, why is it a big deal, really?
Hmm.
And it did come to the same thing. Maybe it's a bit like finding out you're adopted, or you're
Hmm.
fostered, or you weren't actually
Yeah.
born out of love, and all of that kind of stuff. Is there something in that? Um, Especially because he seems like, even though he's a clone and all the rest, it seems like he's had full agency over his own life. He's been able to make his own decisions and that kind of stuff. It's just been that he's used it's not that he carried on his identity. The one thing that does come to mind about it for me, and here's my prediction that won't come through time, it sort of makes Dan Sylvestre's body and character not as important in the story as we thought he was, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because if Cal can be transferred into another body, another consciousness, Dan Sylvester is kind of a non-entity in this story, and is that where his future, the kind of inhibitor, the thing that he's supposed to do that he needs to be killed for, is it
Mm,
actually Dan doing that, or is it actually Cal? And
yeah.
that's the bit that maybe I'm finding is possibly interesting, and maybe gives, if Dan is killed here, or Dan's body is killed here, as has been mooted with Curry and Mademoiselle, etc. Maybe it just gives some extra pathos because it was never his decision to start off with, and maybe he just finds out
Mm,
just before he's killed or something. So, like I said, I agree with you in terms of the fact that it doesn't seem like it should be that interesting, but it does feel like Alastair Reynolds is placing a lot of importance on this
yeah.
fact in his storytelling, which makes it
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, he does say that near the end of the last chapter there that he can't. Um, what do they call it? The thing taking him over. There had to be a genetic match
Mm,
for that to happen,
hmm. The beta
and
Mm,
simulation. Yeah.
that's
yeah,
right.
and so they can't. He said they couldn't kill him because they needed him to get the information from the Cal unit, and it wouldn't, like, somebody asked him, why can't Cal just go into so and so or whatever, and he said no, it has to be some kind of genetic match. Whether I don't know if he was lying or not, but if but is it more is it actually going to work because he's a clone and not just a grandson or what have you? Um, that's maybe that's something that he's going to
Mm,
explore later.
Yeah, I think there was in the last time they talked about this, I think when they were telling Kuri that Dan is a clone of Calvin, they mentioned that he's basically in a very vulnerable position at the time that he lets the beta simulation take over, because the beta
mhm.
simulation can refuse to hand back control, and there's maybe nothing that Calvin can do about it. Sorry, that Dan can do about it, and that is possible because of the clone. So I think in terms of the story, the clone aspect of it is fairly important. And also, I think we're also being told that it's easy to manufacture tissue that's similar genetically to Sylvester, because that's one of the things that the colonists did to try and pretend that Sylvester is dead. So I think there may be something to your
Yeah.
theory after all, Chris, that I think they may, like, all you have to do is create another clone of Calvin and or Dan, as the case may be, and populate it with the beta simulation.
Mm.
Yeah.
But it's also another good and example, I think, in this story of Reynolds playing with the reader in terms of, like, giving our characters reasons and justifications for doing things, but don't tell us, the reader, the whole story. And yet there are other situations where we know more than the people in the story as well. So it's this kind of double-edged sword in both ways of, like, for instance, Curie's real motivations and what she's telling Volnyova being an absolute truck of lies, but a believable
Yeah.
pack of lies, as it goes. And yet in other ways, like the we get this flashback or this dream sequence with her husband in it, and we get that she finds out what the motivation is, but we still don't know. Other
Yeah. We
than
don't
he's
know.
just going to end the world, or he's going to wipe out the race, the human race, humanity, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting as narrative device to kind of be all in on one side and then all out in the other one, and this kind of push and pull of what do we actually know? Because again, I talked about it, and Varsha was not convinced, but I was surmising that the Sunstealer came back uh, with Sylvester from the Shrouder that time he was in there, and
Mm,
it was sort of detailed and said that actually, but I
yeah.
can see why it's easy to assume that. So again, there's an assumption that they placed in the reader that didn't actually come true, which I thought was really interesting.
Wait, I thought that they confirmed in the section that the Sun Stealer did come back with Sylvester in the shroud. Did they not?
I was
I
still
thought
under that impression.
they confirmed that it didn't. Oh, well, maybe I've
So
just picked that up wrong then. That's cool.
I don't. Okay, I don't remember if I was sort of projecting your theory from before, but they did say that there's something alien about the Sun Stealer. And
Yes.
I think I think we know for certain that the Sun Stealer came on board when Sylvester did. Whether or not from Sylvester, we
Mhm.
don't know, but apparently it came on board 20 years ago, which I think fair guesstimate that it came on with Sylvester. And Mademoiselle seems to think that it's some alien entity, and it either has to have come from the
Mhm.
jugglers or the shroud. And Sylvester either planted it
Mhm.
deliberately or didn't. And he seems to wait. Have we talked about this already? Was this in the last set of chapters or this set? I can't remember. But he seems to recall the idea of a sun stealer when he was reading the Amarantan text. But again, we are never told what it is that he recalls. Like we cut to his wedding, I think, from there. And so yeah, like he seems to have some awareness. And the final thing we got about all of this, about why Sylvester needs to die, is that if his if he's allowed to live up to his ambition, he will destroy the world. Which is that a
Right. Yeah.
conscious ambition or something that he inherited from his time in the shroud?
And
So I started to think, I don't know at what point, that his whole search for the Amarantin, he thinks um, that he's helping humanity and saving it from a similar fate. But what if it is instead him being manipulated by some
yeah.
one of these like alien mentalities to unleash something that should have been hidden, and therefore, like, I don't know, bring the inhibitors back or whatever it is his ambition is, that's supposed to destroy the world or the universe in this case. And is it safe to say that some inhibitor tech is what's being hidden in the shrouds? So many questions.
Hmm.
Yeah, a lot of questions. That
Wow.
thought of another. Now that you've been speaking for us about that, one, why can't there be two, three, four?
Wait, say that again.
If there's one clone of Calvin, why can't there be 5 or 6? Especially in this world where they've been talking a lot about time dilation throughout the whole thing.
Mm,
Obviously, Dan's been going for 500 years. It feels like something like that anyway. That he could have been in lots of different places at one time, technically, but being a different
yeah.
clone.
Yeah. Yes, that
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense. And also the Sylvester that Mademoiselle wants to murder, that's Dan, right? Or is it Calvin? Or
That's
is it
Dan,
a
I think.
combination?
Well, again, they
Yeah.
just call it Sylvester, so yeah, it could be
Yeah.
either, actually, yeah.
Mm.
Hmm. Well, with that line of thinking, um, why can't there be more than one sun stealer?
Yeah. It's some tech that can replicate itself into these, like it's a piece of software essentially. So it's interesting that that in a ship full of planet
Destruct.
destroying
Yeah.
weapons, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Kuri even notices some that can ruin stars. So you would have thought that maybe that's the sun stealer aspect of it all, but no, there is a piece of
Mm-hmm.
software in there that is presumably more dangerous than all of that, maybe. And Kuri seems to be working alongside it now to do some battle. Uh, what was it? Wait, I think it was to prevent the planet from being destroyed, right? Which, if the Sun Stealer is supposed to help Sylvester fulfill his quote unquote ambition, that makes sense
Mm-hmm.
that it would work alongside Kuri to put a stop to that if it needs Sylvester alive.
Yeah.
Yes, interesting. So Mademoiselle is dying,
Yes.
uh, or by this time maybe dead, but by the time we get to the next chapter, but
Yeah.
and because of Sunsteel, it's interesting. I'm trying to. Sunsteel is an alien virus, as far as we know. Um, but it's interesting
Yeah.
that this virus that is Mademoiselle herself, this defensive. I don't even know what is it, projection injection into Corey's
Hologram.
brain or whatever,
Yeah.
uh, has the technological means to fight it off for as long as it did. So you just wonder at the level of technological power on both sides of the equation here,
Yeah.
and how that's all going to play out.
Yeah.
Because there's a big history here in this book that we're not getting. We don't know how much history there is in this universe, or how big this universe is really that they're playing in. And I mean, it's the numbers say 25 something, but that doesn't necessarily equate to our calendar, So, um, and I loved the little peek into history when we had Corey talking with her husband at a flashback type sense, and he's talking about this thing called the Dawn War, and what does all that mean, um, and so there's definitely this huge long history, this epic sense of history, and you wonder how much technology is powerful compared to aliens, and how did we go back at some point? Did we reinvent stuff, or did we steal stuff from the past? It's just it's pretty fascinating, the world he's built here.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
And you also have to wonder what Mademoiselle knows. I mean, I think what Sylvester found out from the shroud, there, I don't think he's made that public knowledge, right? And as far as we know, his main goal with the Amarantin, it's just this vague notion that he's saving humanity. So Mademoiselle seems to know something just from his being in the shroud, I think. Um, Maybe, I don't know. What she knows and how she knows it, I think, is an interesting question. And
Yeah.
also, Kuri, at some point, I think when they're discussing the alienness of the Sun Stealer, implies that she thinks that Mademoiselle is alien too,
Oh,
which
really?
is also interesting. Like, she's projecting herself as a human, uh, but is she alien, or is her consciousness alien and chimeric, or whatever? Like the captain is. Yeah, it's all very strange. Okay, here's a kind of random question. We've talked about a lot of mystery and strangeness in the story so far. How much like Area X does all of this feel to you, or do you think just completely different category of mystery and exploration of the unknown?
Interesting.
Well, I'm not getting the same sense of the hatch and the numbers and what have you
Mm.
that Chris always brings up with the lost references. I don't get that sense. I get more of a sense of just I get more of a sense of just untold information
Mm.
from a much longer history than like Area X had, um, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't. I mean, the shroud definitely complicates things a bit.
Mm.
Um, from the linearity of it. Uh, Maybe that's going to be something that gets explored later, and how the shroud works on humans, and how, or even on space or time itself. Um, we'll see,
Mm.
but it is interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because like Chris said previously in the first half of the book, we are plopped into the middle of stuff, and
Yeah.
so we're nowhere near getting anything, like getting the information of what led up to these
Absolutely.
points yet. So
Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
For me, it's slightly different insofar as they were going into Area X in Southern Reach, so it was like humanity going in there. Where this feels like the thing is invading humanity space, if you know what I mean,
Mm,
or the
yeah.
Sunstealers come into that way. Maybe that's why I didn't make any sort of connection in my head. But there is there is the same idea that Sunstealer is able to morph and influence in the same way as
Mm,
fungus would, or that plant
mm,
life in the same way that Van talked about. And I'm I'm looking forward to seeing what effect it has on Curry long term. Which this obviously been told that it's inside her, and she's unsure of how it'll affect her. But I think that'll be really interesting to read, and
yeah.
see actually we see the state of her because we've been seeing from her point of view the whole way along. So I think that'll be quite cool to see the change.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Cool. What did you think of that crazy simulation battle, which ended with not being a simulation? And once again, we don't know what the hell happened. Who turned who turned the simulation off and made it into a real exercise?
Mm.
Did the Sun Stealer have anything
Strange,
to do
right?
with it? Yeah.
Yeah. When I first started reading about it, I was kind of wondering what was the point of this scene?
Mm,
Why do we need to see a training
Mm-hmm.
simulation with these guys, and why is he going into such detail about it? And and then finally, something went wrong with it,
mm,
and then but that's a good question, Vasha, because I don't know if it was Sun Stealer that was the problem with the simulation or not. I really don't remember. I don't remember that being a real good explanation for that, unless I just missed it.
yeah. I mean, I don't even think they really mentioned it after that because I mean, what we got after that was the conversation between Sajik and Kuri, which gave us absolutely nothing. And then they went down to the planet. So I don't even think that the characters have had time to think about just what the hell went wrong there. Um, but with all that said, I think we left off last week where one of the cash weapons was arming itself, right? And after all that talk about Sunstealer, I was so sure that that's what had turned the cash weapon on for whatever reason. But it turned out to be some piece of mademoiselle that was in the machinery that had planted itself and was taking any opportunity it could to go and
Yeah.
kill Sylvester itself. Um, but whether it made further copies of itself and put a copy of it in the cache weapon and left another copy to keep processing that problem, or if this is like the Sun Stealer this time, or if Voliova just like did something weird because she wanted to kill some of her crew members, who knows? Um, none of that I think is known. It's all up for conjecture. But yeah, were you
Yeah,
guys surprised to learn that the cache weapons were turned on by Mademoiselle? I was so sure that we are going to read over this the Sun Stealer.
yeah, that's a great point. Because I think that goes back to what I said earlier. How many how many clones are there? How many Sun Stealers are there? How many Mademoiselles are there? Um,
Yeah.
we don't have any of those answers yet, um, and it's funny that the characters don't seem to be stopping to ask those questions either, because events are going a little too quickly for them to think about them. It seems, and um, I wonder if we're gonna get some reflection once, if Sylvester is on the ship um, with his wife, and if we're going to get any reflection about any of these events after the fact, to shed some light on what actually is going on in the ship.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Kuri got thwarted in her attempt to murder Sylvester or assassinate, I think is the more accurate word, by Stajik turning on Volyova at that moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm guessing things will still be hot for a while, but after things calm down, hopefully we'll find out just what the hell all this means. I'm
Yeah.
really hoping
Yeah.
I want sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that I want some answers in this book. I hope it doesn't all get punted to the next book because
Mm.
there's like I'm very aware of the fact that this is a trilogy, but I would like at least some of this resolved in this book. I think to properly keep my interest to keep going. I mean, who am I kidding? I'll probably read the second book anyway, but I think it'll be more fun if we know more things going in. Um, you were saying, Chris?
What was it saying? Yeah, but oh yes, what I was going to say, sort of the Jared's points that he was making beforehand in terms of like nobody's really stopping to ask these questions. But again, the story is showed with the fact that nobody really trusts anybody in this world. So it's not just that they mistrust Curry and they should be questioning Curry. They did that satisfactory thing. They think they formed an alliance for Curry here, so they're looking at other people, also threats to them in that stage, and also in the fight, we see the fight or the action sequence from Curry's point of view only. She doesn't understand what's going on with Mademoiselle or otherwise either. So it could be the fact that she just didn't have enough information to say what happened. It could have been Mademoiselle manipulating her and doing all that stuff. And I dare say that again that will make sense because I do think that Sun Stealer Mademoiselle dynamic where Mademoiselle says she's been killed. I'm not quite sure that's going to resolve itself quite as cleanly as like Sunstealer will win out. I think what you'll probably find is that Sunstealer will try and co-opt Mademoiselle's personality, or maybe already has in terms of influence in Curie, because they're both software,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Interesting. Damn. And she only has like the visual hologram of Mademoiselle to talk to. So would she even think to suspect? And technically, I think Sunstealer has control of the rest of her brain, or is it just the gunnery implants? I forget. Um, but through that, they can manipulate the rest of her brain, I think. Because, like, how else does Mademoiselle know what she's saying with her subvocalization? And she has to have access to other parts of her brain. So Sunstealer has to have access to. Wow, okay. A very fraught situation inside Kuri's brain. Don't envy her at all.
But what a clever way to kind of create a good guy, bad guy situation if Sunstealer has co-opted Mademoiselle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except the I was unavailable.
Lost him, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There, you're back. Say that again.
I'm back. No.
Yeah.
I just don't buy the fact that Mademoiselle was otherwise preoccupied. That's what was wrong with her, and that's why she wasn't there. I don't see that as being true in this character's case. You know?
Yeah.
The only problem I have with some of this is that we are automatically attributing Sunstealer with having the concept of posing as Mademoiselle in some manner as a virus, and it's an alien thing. So I don't know if we should be jumping to conclusions that it could do that in that manner.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to see if Reynolds makes this alien truly alien, and so it would attempt to. I would think it would attempt to subsume whatever is taking over in a different manner than we would think a human-made virus would attempt to do it. I'm hoping that gets differentiated at some point.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah. What do we think of just shifting gears slightly? What do we think of the fact that Mademoiselle keeps calling keeps attributing the male gender to the sun stealer. Out of thought, it would be more appropriate,
Hmm.
but she keeps saying he, uh,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is interesting. Um, but yeah, and given that it came out of Sylvester's
Huma,
head,
hu-
who
huma,
knows?
Yeah.
yeah, I
Hmm?
was going to say it's an attribution that the Sun Stealer is actually human.
Mm. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that
Or
too.
yeah. Or Mademoiselle also has quirks.
Mm.
Um, she's continually like saying things like "dear girl" and stuff like that. So that just might be one of her
Yeah.
other quirks too. So it's tough to tell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I can't tell if it's just the default male gender that we often do, or like I think still do in a
Yeah.
lot of texts, or if it's a deliberate choice. Uh, but I think it's at least attributing some sort of sentience or conscious awareness to this entity. So,
Yep.
Yeah. What do you guys think about? I kind of wish that Dan's wife had a bit of big of a role,
yeah, same.
Yeah,
because
yeah, definitely.
she's just kind of standing around right now,
Yeah.
and being at his side and not really doing much. And
I
she
agree.
was she's just a daughter of his one-time rival, and that's it. And it's just
Yeah.
kind of okay. We need to get a little bit more characterization there, a little bit more purpose for her being there.
Yeah.
Other than just as a side piece or whatever. But the so I'm hoping that develops into something more. And he is still using a lot of terrestrial terms and imagery in here,
Hmm.
relating back to Earth.
Hmm.
Like the mentions Japanese stuff a couple of times,
Yeah.
and he mentions the like the myth of the burning bush to impress the natives type thing.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering,
Mhm.
is that stuff that would still be around, or am I projecting too much into the time gone by myself? Um, I'm just I'm trying to put that together in my own head.
So it is 500 years in the future,
Mhm.
but also for a lot of characters they've lived maybe 100 years, right, between all the jumping
Yeah,
through like reefer sleep and all of that. Actual lifetime is maybe a couple of centuries. So I guess Christian mythology has lived what 17, 1800 years, so
yeah,
200 more
That's
but
years
true.
doesn't
Yeah.
feel bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It just seems like some of the technology is way too much for 500 years
Yeah.
on the one
Yeah.
hand,
Yeah,
and
I know.
then
Yeah.
on the other hand, uh, if technology did go that fast, that into space travel that far into this area of space we never even heard of before or what
Mm.
have you, then uh, would not also certain local colloquialisms from Earth also advance more
Yeah.
quickly as well? I don't know. I I'm I'm
Possibly.
having a hard time really. There's a little cognitive dissonance there for me personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think I had the same question, and like that's how I explained it away to myself. But while we are speaking of like the Christian mythology references, there was also the fact that I don't know how deliberate this is, but all the cover up work that Voliova did after the cash weapon events. She worked for 6 days and then rested on the seventh day. And then on the eighth day, Sajaki woke up and
Mhm.
asked her what she did.
Yeah.
It has to be
Yeah.
deliberate, right? Like, and like, but what is it telling us? Is it just like a little joke, or is it saying something about the role that Voliova is going to play or has played so far?
Well, in some ways, I think you can attribute Sylvester with his kind of father-son
Mm.
L here, if you really think about it, and the Volyover and the rest are heretics. In some ways,
Oh,
I think
Uh,
attribute that.
interesting. Yeah, and like there's a
Oh,
whole
yeah.
triumvir reference. I don't know. Maybe maybe there's something to that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Triumvirate, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that really stood out, especially in the audiobook. I don't know if I would have noticed it if I was just reading, but then like the audiobook narration is so slow and deliberate. I'm like, worked for 6 days, rested on the seventh day. I'm like, okay, where are you going with this?
I get you. Yeah.
and Volyova is literally bringing the wrath of God down on the planet down there,
Hmm. That's
That's
true.
true.
Yeah.
turning one whole settlement into a pillar of salt, basically. And I don't know. I mean, it's easy to read into this stuff, but we did point out a couple examples of actual words on the page of Christian mythology. So yeah, who
Mhm.
knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? I think they destroyed a settlement that caused planetary weather effects. Somebody was saying this felt really dumb to me, but somebody was saying, "Oh, if only 150 people died, uh, that's fine. Like it's,
Yes.
but okay, sure, that's a small number of people, but there's also planet-wide weather effects. So if they hit a bigger settlement, it's not going to be restricted to just the damage isn't going to be restricted to just the people in that settlement." So here's a third place where I thought the dialogue was clunky was when Sylvester makes this observation about human grief and
Yeah,
something to do with numbers there. I just
Yes.
I just thought like it was an interesting and somewhat poignant observation for sure, but I just didn't like the way it was inserted into the context.
Yeah.
But yeah.
yeah. I had that tab too. I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, human capacity for grief. You know, but
Yeah.
he's like lecturing people.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but it is an interesting point. It was just ham-fisted the way it was used. I mean, it
Right.
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
just a line, and then it's like a thought that Reynolds had and thought, yeah, I'll put this in here. And if he expanded upon it, I think it could be very good. But
Yes.
obviously,
Yes.
did not.
You you know who did it really well? There was an excerpt from Charles Dickens' Hard Times that I had to study for a literature course. I've never read the book, but it was about this girl who, in school, she had to read a paragraph about the number of people who died on a ship. And I think the lecturer wanted her to conclude that it wasn't a big loss. And she says
Right.
it's like something to the effect that, try saying that to the members of the family of the people who died. So, and that
Yeah.
was done really well. This one doesn't begin to compare that. I guess they're making similar points, but anyway,
Yeah.
made me think of that though. But
Yeah, he
Mhm.
did, and Sylvester also brought up the when he was talking about accepting the personal risk of Calvin invading his mind to take command of his motor functions. Um, he was he did bring up um, this idea of free will and this the theoretical consciousness and stuff like that, and he was wondering how dehumanizing it would be for this channeling process to happen. And I thought that was actually a little bit better done because it was done as thoughts in his head and not as him lecturing other people. And so I actually kind of like that section a little bit better when he was thinking about what it meant to be possessed basically by this process, and is it something that did he all the stuff that he was doing up until this point, was he doing it because he's kind of programmed to do it, which was relating him to the viruses that are going on now with the alien virus and the mademoiselle and all that stuff, so that it wasn't a comparison he was making as a character. It was just a comparison that the writer was making, um,
Mm.
and so I like that section that he was wondering about that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I,
Yeah.
I agree that I like that. It's yeah, this one I think you're right. It would have worked also better as a thought in Sylvester's head, rather
Yeah.
than dialogue. But yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what else?
What else?
Uh, so now at the last battle, um,
Oh yes,
what's her name was injured, right? Volyova
Volyova.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
is badly hit.
But
Um,
Tajaki shows up.
Well, again,
um,
it was a very cool scene, wasn't it? When he says, "Well, you can't do anything." You're turned off.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Cool. I think we've about covered it. We have
Yeah, yeah. And she just goes, "Oh, there's been trouble."
you don't say.
Very
Yeah.
understated.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and we kind of ended, with another cliffhanger there. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Sorry, one last question. Did you guys feel like the sense of danger that Sajik posed was sufficiently built up? Like, I know we got a few points where Volyova was afraid of her, but do you think that there was a sufficient build up to the or mention of the intensity of their relationship to get to that point and make that satisfying?
I was okay with it.
Mm.
Because she definitely was very pissed off about what's his name, um,
Nagorny, I think.
Nagorny. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Ironic. Yeah.
she tried to talk Corey into ganging up on her, basically.
Mm.
Um,
That's true.
so yeah, I was fine with it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I think I was less than satisfied, but that makes sense. I didn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
It also plants the seed that maybe Chiliaki or whatever was responsible for the suit malfunction in the demo as well, possibly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whether
Interesting.
true or not
Yeah,
doesn't
we don't know,
seed planted.
but yeah, yeah. Lots of interesting questions to answer, and we have 10 chapters in which to find out this time. I have a feeling that they're gonna be
Mm,
like super action-packed chapters because of how short they are.
yeah.
Although that's not true. I think the most action-packed chapter was really long in the sections that we just read. So who knows?
Yeah.
Either way, lots to look forward to. Let's talk about Wives by Lisa Tuttle. Summary.
Feminism, the short story. Wow. Yes, we are in a future world where men all go to war and women are no longer women but wives, where they have lost all sense of identity and sense of purpose in terms of being mothers and the like, and they are there to perform functions for their husband. It sort of plays with the idea that love is there just to serve a society rather than of their own. And I really enjoyed reading it. Like I was uncomfortable reading it, for sure.
Yeah,
But uh, I think I think there is like a lot of good short fiction, science fiction. There's a good core of a point that it's trying to make and extrapolates upon, and then spells it out in quite strong terms.
yeah. Very strong terms, actually. Right off the bat, we're told that she can now breathe more easily, and she can now burrow deeper into dreams because her husband's gone, and um, and that's a very very strong point, and she's referred to in the story as Jack's wife. Like that's
Yes.
the first reference we get as her name. And it's so it's very, very on hit you on the head. Um, this story is about people who are who don't have equal footing, who are, you know, their job is to be somebody other than who they actually are. And yeah, as it goes on, it's like you said, it gets uncomfortable, and because it's making this greater point about the state of some parts of society that was relevant probably at the time it was written. I think it was written in 76 or something like that. Um,
Mhm.
and it felt more like a commentary on 1950s um, housewife type situation, old Leave It to Beaver Americana type of thing. But I'm sure there was plenty of that still in the 70s as well. And this kind of a story would have been way more poignant in the 70s during the the rise of feminism and stuff like that. So very very on the nose, very telling you exactly what the author is saying, and interesting for all that.
Yeah, interesting story. I think
Yeah.
I don't think I have much to say or add about this. It like all the other feminist oriented stories that we've read so far, like they paint men in a terrible light, I think, or maybe the state of society,
Mhm.
which I don't know enough to say deserved or not. It just is very black and white. I think some of these stories, which like especially the one, I think the one in which all men disappear or whatever. I forget. It was one of the first
Uh,
stories we read from this book. So yeah, I feel like that kind of portrayal is like I've said this before when we read those stories too. Is always like problematic slash difficult because it feels like you're saying one side is objectively better than the other, but there are problems
mm,
both ways. So
Yeah.
anyway,
yeah.
I did think it also spoke to being in a situation that is extremely difficult to get out of,
mm,
because she's Susie is trying to get her people to rise up and overcome their oppressors, and the her people are saying you're going to get us all killed, and we need to stop you from getting us all killed.
Yeah.
mm,
And I'm sure that has definitely happened in history, and the that was a that made the story that gave the story a very very sad overtone, because there is no way out for
yeah,
these are aliens basically. There's no way out for these aliens who were basically colonized by a bunch of guys. And
mm, yeah,
so um so it really gives this sad overtone to the story, in that, and something that you come away with just feeling like, um yeah, that's we don't want to be there. We don't want to be in that society. We don't want to be in that situation. And it's a warning story for that, because you got to make sure that we're not going to get there. We got to make sure that we're going to rise above that and be a better
mm,
society and a better people for it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
agree.
also
I
think
like that bit too. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
yeah. I also think this is another post-Vietnam story.
Mm,
Um, in this guys again, the men went off to fight the war. They were left behind, and kind of probably had expectations for the men who were maybe never come from war. In a way, I thought some of the descriptions of things that of how they changed, like the skin suit that they had to wear, that they almost had to
mm,
have perfect skin as a representation. That even how they described having three breasts and calling that double breasted, uh, things like that. I thought was interesting in terms of their own society. I think the fact that it was actually the women that killed the woman again is interesting. I think it wasn't actually the men that killed her and got rid of her because of what they did. It was the women who actually took one of their own down. And then the fact, obviously, that the mom, when Jack comes home, he doesn't notice any difference.
Yeah, I know that's the kicker right there. Is he even says like the joking line, "This makes the whole war thing worthwhile," and that is such deep irony right there that it really makes you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Those parts were pretty well done. And it does say something about to be oppressed, you need a hand from the oppressed to stay in that state. So yeah.
I think that was
Cool.
her main point, wasn't it? It's the fact that if she could remember just her name, then it would unlock up a lot of other memories, and people wouldn't embrace the fact that we wouldn't even help her try and do that because it actually reminded me a little bit of the film Don't Worry Darling, if anybody's seen that, because it was almost portrayed, and I don't know if you've got the sense of reading it, it was almost portrayed like society in its own anything but that was the same thing of presenting a utopia, but obviously with something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought of Stepford Wives.
Stepford Wives, yeah.
Yeah.
Stepford Wives, yes. Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very similar, I thought. Cool. Anything else before we wrap up for the evening?
I like short stories.
Yeah. The next one isn't going to be, it's 10 pages long, so it's still reasonable-ish. Okay. Yeah, we'll see everybody next week with the next 10 chapters of Revelation. 11 chapters of Revelation Space. And the next short story, what was that? The Snake Who Read Chomsky, I believe was the title.
Yes.
Don't remember the author.
Josephine Sexton.
Oh, thank you, Jared. Josephine Sexton. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.